Hello and welcome to another episode of Protest and Promise. I'm your host, Lisa Salazar, General Manager of the Youth Development Department. As you know, our department was established by the Los Angeles City Council in 2021 to create a greater connection between youth and their city. As part of our efforts to improve the quality of life of young Angelenos, we are working in partnership with Channel 35 to bring you Protest and Promise, giving youth a platform and a voice to discuss the issues affecting them today. As you know, every September, we celebrate the contributions of the Latino community in the United States as part of Hispanic Heritage Month. In the city of Los Angeles, this is an especially important celebration, given our history as a former Mexican territory and as home to some of the largest diasporas from throughout Latin America. The contributions of the Latino community in LA cannot be stressed enough. From our founding to our current leadership, we continue to play an important role in the evolution of our great city. I am very excited to introduce our special guests today, Mayor Eric Garcetti and General Manager of the Civil Rights Department, Capri Maddox, both amazing leaders who have spent their careers fighting for equity for all Angelenos. I'd also like to take a moment to introduce our panelists for this show. These young people are members of our very own Olivia E. Mitchell LA City Youth Council. Every month, they take part in a show as the voice of young people in LA. Please welcome, we have Jordana, just kind of give us a wave there, Sasha, Miriam, Diana, Kimberly, and Ava. Welcome all of you to the show. So Mayor, thank you so much for being here today. We're so excited to have you as a guest on the show.
Well, congratulations, first of all, again, on the department. It's so exciting to hear that every time I hear about both of your departments, which are new for the city of Los Angeles, but really shouldn't be new because our focus on youth and on civil and human rights has been, I think, a core value. But I'm so excited to see these 6 young members of our youth council. I revived a mayor's youth council a few years ago. Something I knew that Tom Bradley had done, resulting in future leaders, many of whom joined the city council, head up local community organizations today, made a huge impact on their city. And I want to do the same thing. And I've seen now this first class of the Olivia Mitchell Youth Council, which draws from every single council district, all the parts of the city, really are, as I like to say, not the leaders of the future, but the leaders of today. And that's what I want folks to hear. As we look at Latino Heritage Month, this is a great Latino city. 50% of the population is Latino. But if you look at our roots, Latinos came here, settled what was then Indian territory, the Tongva nation that lived here, where we are today. And we're a part of that founding because we had native blood in the founders. We had folks that came from Africa, from Asia, of course from the Americas, native, and Europe, who were all kind of defined back then as Hispanos, Spanish. So in many ways, it's such a broad category. You can be light-skinned or dark-skinned. You can come from so many pieces of geography. And Latino, to me, is the most inclusive category in many ways. In fact, in our census, it's not even a racial category. There's a question after you choose race, are you Hispanic in the language of the U.S. Census or not? But here in Los Angeles, so much of our history has been defined by those pobladores, by folks who descended from our native folks, people who have come here as leaders and who today are doing so much to shape Los Angeles, whether it's in culture, government, certainly our youth. And you look at the activist movements that have come out of Los Angeles, like the Chicano moratorium, when folks were protesting the Vietnam War, that was national move. That was a chapter of American history, not just LA history, written by Latino students who took to the streets and said, we didn't like that war, but we also didn't like the treatment that we had in our classrooms. And I'm very proud myself as somebody who, I call myself a mestizo doble, doubly mixed person, because my father, his whole family was Mexican-American, came from Mexico, my grandfather born there, my grandmother's parents born there. My mother's Jewish, so we're always doubly mixed in this city, strange combinations together. But that identity as a Latino leader as the second Latino mayor in a century, really shows that whether it's as mayor or whether it's somebody who is the first employee that's being hired today in a company that's going to change the world, Latinos are everywhere in this city. And Latino history isn't just the history of people who define as Latinos, it's our collective history. And the last thing I'll say to our young people is really this is a moment, a hinge of history, in which we either find the ways that we are going to be divided, the things that separate us, maybe the languages that our parents spoke, our religion, whom we love, how we love, or we find reasons to make sure those are things that unite us, bridges to one another, that we can understand kind of what is universal and human. And I'm so excited to know that our city has such strong young leaders who are either Latino or Latino curious and everything in between, and who are able to really tell that story, but more importantly, write that story for the next generation as well. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you for sharing, that history of the Latino community in Los Angeles and how it's all woven together, and just how amazing the Latin community is to not only Los Angeles, but the entire nation. Thank you so much. Capri Maddox, General Manager of the LA Civil Rights Department, another new department, as we've mentioned. Capri, tell us a little bit more about the department and how you all work with the Latino community here in Los Angeles.
Well, first, Lisa, thank you so much for having us. I'm excited to be here with you and the mayor, and I'm super excited to be here with the next generation of leaders. Our youth council is going to take over Los Angeles and really make a difference, and I am super excited about all of you. You should know that I am the mother of a 10th grader, so I know that young people are ready to serve, to lead, and I'm grateful for it. I just want to tell you that the LA Civil Rights Department is a new department, but we have an opportunity to step up for Los Angeles in so many ways, and we are doing that with the support of Mayor Eric Garcetti, our city council, as well as a lot of Latino leaders. We have community-based organizations like IDEPSCA, Churla, and others that are helping us. I know Homeboy Industries, for example, is also stepping up to help us to lead this operation. And it's just important to know that we have commissioners from the Latino community as well that are civic leaders. And so like all together, we are doing great things in the city, and primarily because we have resources, and the resources that are coming to light now are monies that we have from the repair program. We have $8.5 million that is going to be spent in communities through a participatory budgeting process, and it will serve a number of areas: Boyle Heights, Arleta Pacoima, South Los Angeles. And in thinking of stepping up to give money to community-based organizations, people who are already servicing Los Angeles residents, is very important for such a time as this. I also want to let you know that we have a discrimination enforcement arm of our operation that will fight a discrimination in the areas of commerce, education, employment, and housing. There are people in this city today that will not rent an apartment to someone because of their perceived immigration status, and that cannot be acceptable in the city of Los Angeles. And we are here to fight in this space. I think it's also important to know that we do Know Your Rights seminars in Spanish and English. We do this work in the communities through partnerships with Telemundo and others to let people know what their rights are and how to step up when they are wronged. And we know that some communities have been wronged for far too long, and we are grateful to be here as a resource, as an ally, and someone that lifts a better Los Angeles.
That's awesome. Mayor, thank you for sharing your perspective and telling us about Latinos in Los Angeles, and most importantly, thank you for all the work that you have done with your administration for these past 9 years. It's really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And Capri, congratulations on the new department, and thank you for elevating leadership opportunities and the voice of individuals in the Latino community. So let's hop right in. I believe we have questions that have been prepared by our youth council members. And to kick it off, I think we're going to go to Sasha. Sasha, do you have a question for our panelists?
Hey everyone, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for taking your time to be with us, and thank you so much Director Maddox, another Golden Eagle. So it's great to be here with both of you
Cal
guys.
State LA, yep.
Yeah. So my question is, what do you think about the evolution of the Latino community in Los Angeles? And do you feel that Latinos play a significant role in the city's leadership?
Well, I'll jump in on that. Absolutely. I mean, as I said, from those pobladores, which is Spanish for settlers, who came here, of the 44 or so that set out to come here, all of them spoke Spanish, had Indian, African, European, and two who started actually had Asian ancestry as well. And so it represented kind of that broad diversity. I don't think this category of Latino existed back then as such, but it's an important kind of seed in our city to today, where you have a Latino mayor, you've got Latinos as a board of supervisor, a speaker of our assembly who comes from from Southern California, who are all Latinos, and so on and so forth. Within city government itself, from one of our smallest departments, which is El Pueblo, which runs Alvera Street, all the way up to sanitation, which is, I think, our second biggest department in the city, we've got Latinos, Latinas leading those departments, including our youth development department. So we see that leadership at the top levels, but also increasingly we see it even at the entry levels. For instance, our police department mirrors, for instance, about half of the folks that come in, and sometimes I'm in graduating classes of 60% Latino of new police officers, many of them coming from South LA, Northeast San Fernando Valley. When we look at public safety and police reform, for instance, the best thing you can do is hire somebody who actually comes from the communities that she or he will be in. I see that too in our civic leadership. So when I see more and more, but still undercounted, let's be honest, more faces in Hollywood, more faces in boardrooms, more faces in C-suites. But if you look at the stats, they still don't match our numbers. So it's a place we've focused on. How do we get more youth of color, for instance, getting those good internships in Hollywood so they can be that studio head, can be that Steven Spielberg. How do we do that in tech so the next Mark Zuckerberg might be named Miriam Torres or something? What can we do to really find those ways to make the breakthrough in a way that reflects what we now know our population to be? And as I said, of all the kind of categories we can categorize people, Latino is very porous. So it can be somebody from Argentina, it can be somebody from Mexico or Puerto Rico, it can be somebody who speaks Spanish, somebody who doesn't speak Spanish, somebody who's black, somebody who's white, somebody who's brown, somebody who looks completely indigenous. So it really is a way for us to understand the multiplicity of all of our stories, not just one story that we have in our mind. Latinos are new Mexican immigrants, full stop, that look like X. We're a very broad range of folks, and I want to see the power reflect that as well.
Sasha, great question. Thank you for that. Miriam, I think you have the next question.
Hi, thank you for having us today. My name is Miriam, and I am a proud Latina from the northeast side of Los Angeles, Highland Park specifically. And my question is for Lisa, actually. What role does the Youth Development Department play in ensuring that Latinos have a voice in the civic and decision-making process?
Yeah, great question. So, 49% of the population in LA County is Latino. And of that, about 60% are under the age of 40. So we're a very young Latino population here in LA County and in LA City. So at the Youth Development Department, we really strive to make sure that our staff, our youth council, and really anything that we do reflects the demographics of the city. There's so much work that needs to be done to, elevate the voices of not only, young people, but Latino family, Latino communities in the areas of health and education, public safety, economic development. I would really encourage you to take a look at a recent Latino scorecard that was produced by the Alliance for Better Communities in partnership with USC and UCLA. They really go deep on these various strategies on how to improve overall kind of wellness for Latinos in those subcategories. But it really is about creating opportunities so that our work reflects the demographics of the city. Thank you for that question, Miriam. So our next student question comes from Kimberly. Kimberly, I think you have a question for Capri.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm so grateful to be here. So the struggle for civil rights for the Latino community began in the 60s around access to resources and educational opportunities. Do you think that the situation for most Latino families has improved since that time?
Wow, that's a great question. Um, Kimberly, I just will say that I wanted to give acknowledgement to the 1968 walkouts that the students did from our LAUSD schools. I mean, we're talking about the largest Latino-led protest in the country, and it was led by young people from LAUSD schools. We're talking over 1 week, we had 15,000 students walk off our campuses and to create a better Los Angeles, actually. And the result of that is to be sure that we had bilingual education at our LAUSD schools, to know that we have more opportunities for the Chicano studies programs that many of our Cal States and other higher learning institutions have here in Los Angeles, and even led to other work that is happening now. When we think about some of the immigrant rights support that many communities have benefited from, it's because the Latino communities have stood up for a better Los Angeles, and even fighting for workers and better pay and fighting against wage theft is something that I think, you know, the fight continues. And the reason the fight continues because the fight has to continue. There's always things that need to be addressed, right? We're not where we want to be, even though we're not where we used to be. And it's important to know that in Los Angeles and all around the world, frankly, we can't stop. Because the struggle continues. When you think about the fact that in Los Angeles, right here, City of Angels, the hate crimes against the Latino community rose by 147% in 2021. It went up against all, you know, as it relates to all communities, but we know that leaders like Kevin De Leon and others in the city council stood up to help us to create and launch the most successful anti-hate crime prevention campaign in LA City's history. In over 5,000 locations, we have the campaign that says LA is for everyone in 18 different languages. It's important to know that we have to keep the fight, because if we don't, you have challenges as it relates to wage theft. The COVID crisis hit the Latino community in a significant way. And again, dealing with hate and discrimination are things that continue to be challenges. So the short answer is we've come a long way, but there's a lot more that we're going to do to lift a better Los Angeles and a better Los Angeles for all. Thank you.
Wow.
Can I jump in real quick
Yeah,
on this?
absolutely.
So it's such a great question, such a great answer as well. I just want to add one or two other things to that as well. We know that the wealth gap and the income gap is real for communities of color. Around the United States, the wealth gap between black and white is 10 to 1, or 1 to 10, I should say. In other words, white families have on average 10 times as much wealth as a black family. In Los Angeles, a family of Mexican descent or a black family, that ratio becomes 100 to 1. Not just 10 to 1. But here's good news of what the city is doing. When we raised the minimum wage, who did that help out? Communities of color, especially Latinos as well. So we were able to see just in the last 8 years, 9 years since I've been mayor, we passed that with the city council, biggest city in the country to do that, and it boosted wages by an average of 44 and 43% for black and brown Angelenos respectively in the country at a time when those wages only went up about 27%. So we are trying to lessen that gap. We're looking at wealth building, we're looking at incomes, and trying to dig deep with things like free community college, free transportation, et cetera, that help more than just the Latino community, but especially hit the Latino community in a good way as well.
Really good. Thank you. Thank you both for that. Jordana, I think you have the next question.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I think I speak for everyone. It's an honor to speak with your leaders like yourselves. My question is for Mayor Eric Garcetti. How would you characterize the difference between Los Angeles and other major cities on the East Coast in terms of Latino culture and political values?
It's a great question because as diverse as I talk about LA's Latino population, when you move out of LA, and I went to college in New York City, so I saw really that emphasis on Dominican culture and Puerto Rican culture and Caribbean, which is much more deeply represented in New York and the East Coast than it is here, though we have significant populations from those places too. One interesting thing is that a lot more people self-define as Hispanic there as opposed to Latino, loaded. You know, it's funny, Latino, Latina, or Latinx now, as some are saying, is more gendered, but it's also seen, I think, by West Coast, and in particular when the Chicano movement, which is about Mexican Americans, moved forward, a lot of West Coast Latinos embraced that term more because it didn't have the word Spanish in it, and Hispanic had Spain, so it's more about the colonizer. Just, you know, slight differences, but subtle and important ones. You'll see that also in Florida, where more people will self-define as Hispanic than as Latino. You also see just a difference. The experience, these countries are so diverse. So if you're in a place like Florida, you're gonna have more South Americans and Caribbean folks of Latino descent, whereas here, it's more Mexican American, Central American, though of course we have people from every single country. And then finally, I would say one of the big differences too is kind of the stories of what has brought people. There's always been refugees, asylum seekers, people looking for a better life, but really for Mexicans who immigrated here, that was during the Mexican Revolution over 100 years ago, where we see today in countries, you know, a more recent, for instance, from Cuba, you still have refugees leaving today. Sometimes they'll come through Mexico, go to Mexico, and then come up to the United States through the border here, but it's just a different journey. So, you know, with each generation, I would say the differences are not necessarily always geographical, but generational. For somebody who's a fourth or fifth, or as I've met some people in New Mexico who never really say the border, I never crossed the border crossed me, but they're of what they call Spanish descent there. They're 18th and 19th generation natives of that land with their families. And kind of where do they fit into the Latino story when a lot of Americans, white Americans traditionally looked at anybody who's browner and said, oh, well, you're newer than me. Of course, Native Americans can say, well, you're all newer than me. So it's a very interesting kind of multi-layered conversation. And I think the difference between East Coast, West Coast, a little bit that story, what we call ourselves, and just, you know, some of the culture and the food, which is different. I'm glad to see tacos and Mexican food finally invade, you know, New York and the East Coast in the last few years, because when I went to school there, you couldn't find a good taco anywhere.
Great question. Thank you. Thank you both. So this should be a much longer show, and I know we have 2 more questions and just a little bit of time. So let's jump to Diana. Diana, I think you have a question for Capri.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much to you both. It's an honor to be here today. My question is, what are some of the resources and programs that your department offers for low-income minority communities living in Los Angeles that may want to get involved in civic participation?
All right. Well, thank you for that question. And we do want more communities to get involved in government, particularly our Latino brothers and sisters. I think there are a number of things. I mentioned the participatory budgeting program, that's $8.5 million that will help community-based organizations. And right now, the program is going live, and I would highly recommend folks that are interested in weighing in on how city resources, and we're talking about millions of dollars, will be spent. Please go to repair.lacity.org to learn more about how the city is making decisions with community leaders on how resources can be spent. And we're talking about the areas of Arleta Pacoima, Mission Hills, Panorama City, and Boyle Heights. And I think even in South Los Angeles as well, in Southeast Los Angeles, it is very important to know that those resources will be spent in communities based on the selected items by residents that live there, and with service providers that are already taking care of our LA residents. I also think it's important to know that when we think about civic involvement, we have a number of commissions in our department. We have the Transgender Advisory Council, the Commission on the Status of Women, the Human Relations Commission, the Reparations Commission, and even the Civil Rights Commission. And thinking about our Latino leaders and growing new leaders in that space is something that is really important for us. And I would like to, use this point of privilege because we have the mayor here. I think it'd be great to have young people join those commissions.
Here,
Absolutely.
And so we're excited about the influence of our Latino leaders, whether they're folks on the city council, and some of you know we have a number of distinguished Latino leaders on the city council, and we appreciate that work, but we also are really excited about the next generation of leaders. And I see many faces on this screen that are going to do great things for the city of Los Angeles. So own your story, own your truth, and know that we are here to lift you as you lift a better Los Angeles.
wow, lots of exciting ways to connect directly. Thank you. I love that. All right, Ava?
We didn't forget about you, Ava.
We
Don't
didn't
worry.
forget about you. Bring us home.
Awesome. So grateful to speak to you all today. My last question is for all of our wonderful panelists. Which Latino leaders most influence you to do the work you do today?
All right.
That's a great question.
I
Go
can
ahead,
start.
please.
We'll go this way.
Jaime Regalado from our beloved Cal State Los Angeles. Sasha, he's still running the is leader in the Pat Brown Institute, and he was my political science teacher and really taught me how to love the city of Los Angeles and to be prepared to serve in a significant way. So shout out to Jaime Regalado. Please give him my regards, Sasha.
I'll say two. One is Ed Roybal, and the other is Salvador Garcetti. Salvador Garcetti was my grandfather. He came over the border in his mother's arms during the Mexican Revolution before we had the term, I guess, as a dreamer. And, had no father raising him, grew up in Boyle Heights, but was able to turn his life around after getting in a little trouble with the law as a young man, volunteered for World War II, still wasn't a citizen, but earned his citizenship, became a barber, and I'm here before you as mayor of this city because of the courage he showed. Juanita, his wife, because I think it's as important to recognize the struggles that women had the double burden of working full-time, late night shift in a meatpacking plant and then raising a family, and so she deserves equal credit to that as well. But Ed Roybal was the first Latino elected to Los Angeles City Council, and actually my grandfather, Salvador Garcetti, volunteered for his campaign, so it's the first time we were kind of politically active ever. And then he endorsed my father when he sought to become the first Latino district attorney in over 100 years here in Los Angeles. So he really faced a lot of discrimination, a lot of hate, but he persisted, built a grassroots campaign, and he won, and really paved the path for those of us who are now Latino and Latina electeds to be here today.
All right.
And
yeah, thank you. I have to say my parents, to start, when I was working on my undergrad, I went to school with a lot of kids that grew up in the Central Valley, and I learned about the issues of farm workers, and Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta became a hero and shero in my life, and our great leaders that are right here with us today, Mayor Garcetti, and I won't even start to name names because I will miss them, but we have so many great folks, Latinos, Latinas here in the city, not only in our workforce, but also as my peers and colleagues leading other departments, really dedicated to public service and addressing all of these tough issues that need to be tackled and solved to, improve the lives of folks throughout Los Angeles. So what an amazing show today. Yeah. Mayor, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Capri, again, welcome and thank you. To our LA City Youth Council, you all are amazing, and I have to say, it's really the young people that inspire me every day to continue to do this work. So I know the future is in good hands. This episode was especially special to me as a member of the Latino community. Gives me an opportunity to elevate the voices and show appreciation for all of the great sacrifices that our leaders who have come before us have made to kind of pave the way for us and to make Los Angeles a better city. So thank you all again. I'm Lisa Salazar, your host, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Protest and Promise.